Well, I mean, it was just a combination of events, I guess, that led to this. We've been playing at DC10 and been with residents there for the last 6 years. And same as Space, the Terrace of DC10 and Terrace of Space are our favorite rooms to play, and the one we think reflects better our sound. I mean, the day was not ideal on the Fridays, let's say, because of our touring schedule and because of the strong competition, I think. And yeah, it just happened. It made sense.
Shauna, I want to bring you in because you manage one of the big artists most associated with DC10 at the minute, the Martinez brothers. Have you been in a situation where there are offers to do residencies elsewhere for those guys? And if so, why have you decided not to take them and stay at DC10?
Well, first of all, this is our 6th year at DC10. The guys have been, actually the guys came into the Ibiza market in 2008 and played with The Defected originally, and Subliminal. They played a couple of parties in that market. And we got into Circo Loco in 2011. It took quite a lot of positioning to get them there, outside of the soulful house market that they come from. And, it really is a home to the guys. It's a family. They've grown up in that club. They've grown up with, Seth, Jamie, and now they are top billing. And we definitely have been approached, but they're extremely comfortable where they are right now, and they get to really do what they want to do, which is play good music and be free to do, to be as creative as they want to be in those rooms in DC10.
We talked the other day, and you've mentioned it there, this rebranding of them as artists from when their first contact as kind of soulful, funky house, is that what you said, to where they are now? How did you go about making that change and changing the image to the place where they have now?
They originally, at the time, they were working with another client of mine, Dennis Ferrer, and Dennis was already sort of positioned outside of that soulful house market. We were working with an agency, Loco Dice's agency in Germany, and so there was already a shift going on, but it was extremely hard to really get anybody from the techno community to pay attention to the guys. And actually it was Manfredi Romano and Tale of Us and Life and Death that gave them an opportunity, if you remember, to play at your party in Sonar. Yeah, in 2011. And we were actually meeting with Jan at the same time at Ushuaia. We were talking about doing an objectivity residency with Dennis. And for one reason and another, that didn't work out. But meanwhile, they played at Sonar. Elliot Shaw, who was the PR guy at Circo Loco, came, saw them, and talked Antonio and Andrea into giving them a shot. And it was a big risk for Circo Loco. I mean, they always like to take risks, right? I think that's what kind of keeps them fresh. So they gave them an early slot in the main room, and they did well. The feedback was fantastic, and the rest is really history.
Can you give us a bit of an insight into what it's like dealing with Circo Loco and DC10 in terms of getting gigs for your artists, the communication compared to other places? Because it's perhaps a little bit different than other clubs, isn't it, in terms of how that works?
Yeah, I mean, Circo Loco is everything has been done historically there, organically, and that was always a beauty of the place. There was no strict marketing policy. There was no bottle service. It was very natural, and the DJs promoted it, the fans promoted it. For example, Steve Martinez, the older brother, actually really was kind of studying on YouTube in like 2007, Luciano and Loco Dice playing on the terrace. So I think that it's just basically, like it's been very organic up until now, and DC10 operates, or Circo Loco is operated for us as being like a shop window to the winter season, and we've certainly seen a huge growth in gigs throughout the year as a result of what we've done with Antonio and Andrea.
I think we'll come back to DC10 a bit later, but I want to move on to Richard. There were a few sore heads, I think, yesterday morning because everyone had been at Sankey's on Wednesday night. Can you tell us a bit about what you're involved in there? What event that is?
Yeah, they've just started a new night. It's called Dance 8889. And David Vincent wanted to do something that represented where he first started and what he likes. So he's trying to recreate the Summer of Love 88 vibe, and he's booking a lot of the original DJs from the first wave of acid house in London to come and play. And he's picked a really good cross-section of DJs, and Danny Rampling's playing, Bushwacker's playing, Alfredo is the resident on a weekly basis. And he's got people like Fabio and Groove Rider, but playing house and techno sets as they used to do back in 88, 89 and 90 before they went to drum and bass. He's got Eddie Richards, myself, and he's got a good cross-section of people. And I think Wednesday night actually far exceeded my expectations of what the night was going to be like. I got there early, it must have been about 12:30, and I was expecting it to be a bit thin to start. And I walked into a packed dance floor at 12:30, and it was a really mixed crowd of ages. I thought there'd be, a lot of us old fogies in there, And I get there, and it's like 70% young kids, well, I say kids, but the youngsters that you're seeing in the clubs in Ibiza. And that kind of surprised me that there was so many young people that wanted to experience firsthand the authentic acid house experience. And so that was great. And all the DJs from start to finish were amazing. When I got there, Nicky Holloway was playing, and he played an excellent deep house set. And then Bushwhacker went on and took it into the old school Brooklyn breaks and acid house mixed. And I went on and played a bit of everything. Danny Rampling played a Jack-in acid house set, which I was quite thrown back by. And then Alfredo played a Jack-in house set to finish it off. So it was really a consistent acid house vibe. And I don't think I wasn't really expecting it to be that consistent right the way through. And the whole energy of the place felt like there's something new going on. So it was definitely, the opening party was a real success. And I think it will be one of the success stories of Ibiza this coming season.
In terms of the music that's played, was it all old music?
It was. Yeah, it was. I think Danny played a few new tracks, but acid house stuff that sounded authentic. But generally, it was all old. I think I broke the rules and played one track from 1990. So it wasn't. Everything else was 80s that I was playing, and it was like that all the way through.
I just wanted to ask, because when you play obviously regularly as well, and you wouldn't normally play a full set of tracks from 1988 and 89.
On a normal basis?
A normal set, yeah.
No, what's going on here? On a normal set, I would play completely upfront, acid, funky techno, house, deep house, a good mixture. But what I play is very modern, very kind of out there, very trippy. I don't play a lot of old music unless I'm playing like a 6 or 7 hour set. Then at the end, I'll go into some old stuff. I might even play disco if I'm playing a long set like that. But as a general, if I'm playing a normal 2, 3, 4 hour set, it's going to be very modern, upfront.
How do you, the point I'm getting to is how do you think they can make it an authentic night in terms of, because often with these kind of nights that there's almost not a naff feel to it, but if you go into a club and you hear music from 25 years ago, it doesn't kind of connect, as you said, in the way. But if you, how can you make it authentic then?
I think that it's been made authentic by the attitude of what David Vincent has asked for and the way he's actually booked the DJs and the DJs that he's booked. If you put Alfredo, Danny Rampling, Bushwhacker, Mr. C and Nicky Holloway together, it sounds like quite a mishmash. But people are going to think, okay, we're playing together, so we're going to do something that is very specific. And I think that it's got that. And I do play quite a few of these old school events in London, like 2 or 3 times a year. And a lot of the time, it's pretty cheesy. It's like, all the hits, all like the hands in the air, big cheesy rave tracks. And it's a bit naff. But this doesn't have that. It's like, it feels more akin to being at Dungeons or Clink Street in 88 or 89 than one of the big clubs that was doing the more commercial things. So it seems to have captured the right attitude, and the sound is very authentic, and that I think is what's going to make it work. The authenticity of the sound, rather than it just being all the big cheesy rave hits from 88 and 89.
Jacoby, I want to bring you in now and completely change the conversation. Can you tell us a bit about what you do, what you're involved in on the island?
We work extensively with villa parties here in the UK, in Ibiza, sort of creating a more intimate vibe, getting big name DJs into a sort of totally new experience. I think as more and more people are accessing this world and it's attracting more money and more VIP clients, people want to find a change and experience something new. We live in a world where our senses are bombarded with stimulants from all aspects, and therefore people are constantly looking for something new. And on top of that, I think the DJs and the people who come to these parties really enjoy that intimacy and getting closer to the DJs that they respect and normally see on a big stage, and are sort of slightly far from detached from. And I think from major DJs I've spoken to, they also enjoy that interaction with the crowd and feeling really, really close and part of a party.
So tell us how this works then. I mean, do you approach a villa? Do you approach the artists? Who goes to these parties?
The villa is the first piece and the most difficult piece to get across. There are certain villas that do and don't work for this. The clubs, the major clubs on the island aren't particularly a big fan of this because it takes a lot of spenders out of the clubs, and therefore it becomes a problem.
How do you mean exactly?
Major table spend. I mean, I gave you an example earlier. P. Diddy threw a big villa party about 4 years ago on the same night as a big night at Ushuaia. I think they quoted about £70,000 worth of revenue was left from table spends because everybody wanted to be at P. Diddy's party. Therefore, it's a tricky navigation to make sure these things go ahead smoothly. And you have to use the right people, the right villas. There's a number of small little pieces you need to put together, not give away the location, run shuttles from a meeting point, make sure that you've got the right licensing in place, you're using the right security teams, the right staffing teams. And then the DJs, we work with Soca Loco and the team there and throw after parties for them. So they often, having played a big set and at Soca Loco, want to go on somewhere else and enjoy playing in a more intimate environment and continuing on.
And who attends these parties? I mean, you say big spenders from Ushuaia.
It's a varied group. You know, it does attract some of the VIPs that are increasingly coming to this island. I think it's an interesting point that how it is obviously changing and evolving, and the money that this music industry and this genre is attracting now. I think a lot of these people live a rather detached world, and with lacking authenticity. And when they come here and they feel part of a community and they get to be at DC10 and it's not being pulled out as they might be in a sort of West End nightclub or a New York-based nightclub, and they can really feel part of something, and reconnect with sort of letting free and letting go in their actual lower energy rather than the sort of mindlessness which is their day-to-day life. And then it's a varied of, you know, friends of the DJs, friends of the major promoters from Circo Loco, but it's a collective group of people who come to this.
You touched upon the fact that Ushuaia weren't particularly happy, or that some of the clubs haven't been happy. I mean, how is the relationship with the clubs in terms of that side of it, but also with using their artists or working with artists that might be playing at a club?
I think it's a matter of respect, really, and being open and communicating with them. I think a lot of these villa parties are shut down across the year. A lot of people come in from around the world, rent an expensive villa, try and throw a villa party, pay the artists a lot of money to come and play. That's not how we go about it. We talk with the clubs, we talk with the major promoters, we have relationships with the DJs. They come because they want to play there, not because it's a big payday. And so it's just about how you manage it and how you deal with it.
Richard, I want to just bring you back in, because that's a million miles away from Clink Street, isn't it? The sort of villa party with VIPs and all that kind of thing. How does that make you feel?
Well, I've been to a couple of villa parties like that over the years here, and they're fun, but I mean, it's a different thing. It's like night and day. They're like what was happening at Clink Street is a dark, dingy warehouse of quite scary people celebrating life and hugging each other and getting completely mindless. Whereas I mean, these villa parties are they're a bit more classy, and you know, like the way that you guys set things up, it's a very sort of classy, high-end VIP experience. What was happening at Clink Street is the absolute antithesis of that. You couldn't get further away from each other.
I think it's important that this island accepts both sides of that, because there's a patronism to it in the fact that, you know, the VIP table spends that major clubs like Amnesia and Pasha rely on to keep the lights on and to continue with the big production and this cost they have. You need to be able to embrace both sides of it to keep the lights on and keep the island growing and the industry growing in the way that it is at the moment.
Shauna, as a manager, how do you feel when you have your artists playing at villa parties like this?
As has been said, I think, you know, these kind of scenes coexist, and you know, we can't turn our back on any audience, really. The guys obviously get to experience a full-on, authentic Ibiza, wild rave party at DC10, and then they can go to a more upscale event, and I don't see them as being, you know, mutually exclusive from one another.
Pete, you've moved to LA a couple of years ago. How's that going? What's it like there?
Yeah, it's nice.
we were talking before. Said I wanted to ask you, how's your opinion changed of how Ibiza's viewed now that you live there?
Well, I think certain things happen at certain times of your life, and Ibiza has played a huge part of my life for a very long time. I started coming with Nicky Holloway in 1986 or whatever the first time. And from about 91, I've been here every year since. I had a house here for 11 years. And there was that big chunk of time when I was resident, like 18 weeks a year for about 10 years. So I've kind of done my time here, and I still come back and I love it, but I guess being in LA, living in LA, I've traveled the world, been to some amazing places, but I never got to actually live anywhere else properly. And I guess it changes your perspective a bit, that for a long time in my life, Ibiza was my life. You know, I couldn't really see out of what was going on this island, and this island was all encompassing, you know. You think about your reputation. You almost like, if you don't exist in Ibiza, you don't exist, kind of thing. And my perception's definitely changed. Not living here anymore. I can come and I can enjoy it and I can appreciate it, and it's just I view it in a little bit of a different way. but that was my time, my story. If you come into Ibiza for the first time, and particularly for the underground guys, it's still, you know, Berlin's got a bit to say about things, but it's still profoundly important, I think, for the underground in terms of developing underground acts.
Can you give us a bit of an insight into what it's like doing an 18-week residency, with the sort of strain it puts on you, the sort of things you have to consider?
Well, it's a lot of fun, and you can earn a good living, and you can kind of grow your reputation, change your reputation. It's a creative thing to do. I loved it. I loved every element of it, from creating the flyer, the look of the name of the party, booking the acts. It takes its toll. You know, it's a hard thing to manage the other aspects of your life when you're a resident in Ibiza. Things can get a bit crazy in it. Yes, I would talk to Jamie about it. I mean, he's been coming to Ibiza forever, but his life changed massively when he took on Paradise. And it probably took him 3 years to actually come to terms with what it meant, and kind of, it was like exploded at the start. And I think he's now got a calmer kind of team around him, and a kind of little bit more of a different mindset to when he started. Because you have to kind of manage the madness as well, because we're here to entertain people, here to play music and run great parties, so.
Matteo, you've got all this to look forward to, obviously, this year doing the residency. Can you tell us how you started the process of programming the artists? You mentioned some before, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, because it is a very unique sound. It's kind of it's what you guys are renowned for. Can you just talk a little bit about that process?
Yes, so the process behind the programming was, as I said, to bring in some talent from our, let's say, our spectrum of sound, which is the sound that has been developing and growing in the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years. It's a movement that came a bit after the deep house movement of Jamie and, you know, Crosstown Rebels and this kind of vibe. And now there is this, let's say, techno and melodic, and like still some house. I'll mention like some labels and some stuff like, you know, Dystopian, Inner Vision, Life and Death, Giggling. These crews have been working their way in the scene now for a long time, some of them more, some of them are more new. And we've always been kind of playing similar small venues and keeping the parties cool, keeping the programmation super forward thinking. And somehow I thought there was a spot for us to kind of all put this creativity together and take on a broader project, bring this sound to a broader audience. And Ibiza was, I think, the best place to do this.
With some of the artists that you brought in, you mentioned earlier that perhaps are a bit more experimental. How did they respond to being invited here? Was there any resistance, or were they willing to come?
No, there was no resistance at all. Actually, we've been booking these guys for a long time, in all over the world. Actually, with other brands, or just supporting us, or in general, we played with them. And I made music with most of these guys, and we're just also friends. You know, they gave us trust. We're very happy, and that we got the support, especially from the underground. And we tried to keep the lineup, let's say, uncompromised, also as a form of respect, you know, back to the scene that gave us the support, let's say, yeah.
Pete touched upon the idea of doing the residency, and as part of your career, it's kind of a thing that many artists do. When we were in the green room earlier, we were discussing this idea of artists doing a residency much earlier in their career than perhaps previously was the case. Do you think it's kind of something that people just have to do now to make their career growth and path continue?
It really depends where you want to go with your career. I can say that in our situation, it was not absolutely necessary to go on with this residency, because, I mean, we build our profile outside of Ibiza also from the beginning. Let's say that the shows, afterlife shows, are already bigger shows outside of Ibiza rather than in Ibiza. Ibiza is the most challenging territory for us.
What do you mean?
I mean that like the scene that we're in, when it's some let's say in ADE or in of sonar parties, or like during this gathering of this kind of cultures, it's easier for us to sell out the shows rather than Ibiza, which is a bit more commercial or commerciable kind of situation.
So when you said you didn't compromise the booking earlier, did you still have to think about acts that would sell tickets at all, or did you literally not compromise it in any way?
No, absolutely. We have acts that are well known here, but it's, let's say, a fourth, a third of the lineup. The rest is basically unknown on the territory and definitely doesn't have a following here.
Shauna, the Martinez brothers do have a residency at Circo Loco, but it's obviously a very different type of residency because they're not involved in planning programming or artwork. They're not involved in that level. Do you foresee in the future that they could do something like Matteo's done and have their own thing?
Right now, we're not looking within Ibiza, but they are growing something with Seth Troxler, which will be something that will grow outside of Ibiza, Tuskegee, which is their joint brand. But, you know, I think there are a lot of roadblocks in Ibiza to doing your own thing, and it would really need to be the right moment in time to really make that jump.
What are the roadblocks you see?
A lot of competition, obviously, you know, like I feel like because DC-10 is, or Circo Loco, it's not helmed by any particular DJ. I feel like we're very safe and secure in there. They can continue to kind of, you know, evolve within that community of the DC-10 family, but there's considerable politics and, I mean, competition, frankly.
Pete, I wanted to just bring you in on the same issue. Maceo Plexus started his own residency this year at Pasha on Tuesday, and it kind of seems from the outside like he's going up, it's a bit of a suicide mission because he's going up against Carl, which is going to be the biggest night ever in the history of space, sold out already, people are talking about. Do you think that, the same question, do you think that artists take this step to have a residency because they see it as necessary as part of their career growth?
I don't know. I think everybody makes their decisions for their own reasons, and everybody's situation's unique. I don't know. Some people like you know, there's a thing about going back into the same room on a weekly basis and playing at the same time in the same place on a weekly basis, and knowing the staff and knowing the sound, and just being comfortable in a place and feeling you get a different relationship with the audience as well, and that's the good thing about residencies. You know, it suits some people, and I think that's the decision that Eric's made. He just wants to be in a place where he can do that week in, week out. I don't know, and then it can be fun touring around and not having the worry, and being in part of the DC-10 family. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Difficult question.
What was it for you that made you decide not to continue with the residency and take individual gigs?
Well, frankly, I think I've been around so long that there was a certain amount of, you know, I go through periods where you kind of reinvent yourself, I guess. A lot of people discover me on the radio, so they think you're a radio guy. But I was always a DJ first before I got on the radio, and I always enjoyed playing, and that was always my passion. So I guess, you know, when the opportunity, funnily enough, I took over on Tuesdays from Paul Oakenfold in 2002, and I kind of stumbled into being a resident. I was a guest of his on a regular basis. He decided to move to America. I took over the rest of the season, met the Pasha family properly. Danny Whittle was booking it with Mark, and then they offered me to come on board full time. And it was the right time for me. It was like a great opportunity to show a different side of what I was doing. It was a great way to engage with Ibiza at that time. And I guess for 5 or 6 years, there was no stopping us. It was fantastic. And then I decided to go to San Antonio and do something completely different. But I was always up for a challenge. So.
And where this year are you playing then? Are you on the island much?
I'm like last year. I do Solomon +1, a few Ants, Radio 1 weekend. Still one other party we're just trying to sort out. So I'm here for like 5 or 6 weeks. So you play once a week.
Okay. Richard, same to you. How often are you here this year? How many gigs have you got at Sankey's for Dance 88, 89?
I've got 5. The one on Wednesday was the opening party. I'm here again on July 20th. And then I've got 2 in August, 1 at the beginning, 1 at the end, and then the closing party in September.
And housekeeping, what can we expect from you guys this year? Can you also let us know, because you didn't really say who's played at your parties before, who kind of been some of the artists that you've had at the parties the last couple of years?
Last year we had Martinez Brothers came to play, Jamie Jones, DJ Wild, Solomon, WAF, I mean, to name a few. This year we've got a residency at Blue Marlin. I think we've got 12 dates over the summer, and then we expect probably 4 or 5 of the more intimate villa parties.
We didn't ask before, but I mean, are these parties legal? How does that work?
We get licensed for them, yeah.
And they never get closed down?
We have never had one closed down, touch wood. But they do get closed down regularly, RS on the island, but we take precautions to prevent that from happening.
I want to just come back to this point I asked Pete before about it in terms of how people perceive. You answered from your point of view, but I wanted to know what you thought people in LA, how they perceive Ibiza, and has that changed or is that changing in terms of how important it is to the scene and in general?
I think we've seen a trend in the last since 2008, 2009, when America really woke up, city by city, town by town, to EDM, electronic music, that it created a breed of DJs for the first time that life didn't end at Ibiza. You could actually survive without Ibiza. Your reputation wasn't really tarnished. And certain DJs made decisions a few years ago, like Tiesto, to actually not come to Ibiza at all. And he was fine with that, and his career took off in Vegas, and he went in a different direction. I think if you're an underground DJ, I think if you're up and coming, playing on the house or techno scene, and your circuit is Chicago, Detroit, New York, Brooklyn, Miami, some of the underground spots in LA, then I think you think it's very important to still come to Ibiza and try and play with Taylor Vuss or get a gig at DC-10. So it depends kind of what kind of music you're in. It seems very much, obviously, as a generalization, the more commercial end of what our scene is about exists in the daytime in Ibiza now, and the underground seems to be more and more in charge of the night. So,
And Matteo, I want to ask you the same question because you live in Berlin, don't you? How do people perceive Ibiza in Berlin, and is that changing or has it changed?
Well, let's say Berlin is also a very important place for techno and for clubbing. It's probably one of the best, has one of the best clubs, one of the best scenes. Let's say is more into techno and darker shades of this music. And the Berlin vibe definitely does not reflect the Ibiza vibe. I would say the opposite. It's just something completely different, and that's why I love it. I love both. I love to, as I said, to approach different opportunities in my life and meet people that see things completely differently. And I would say that the perception of Ibiza from a Berliner point of view is like, it's not something that's appealing, I would say. I would love Berliners to come to Ibiza, to come experience that we're building something new, that there is as also with Sankeys, and there are new realities that are going to bring underground and are going to bring some culture to this island. But I think it's a long way.
How can we make people come then if it's not appealing?
Sorry?
How can we make them come here if it's not appealing to them? How are you trying to overcome those objections they have?
I mean, I'm just doing my thing. It's not like the focus is to make Berliners come to Ibiza, but I guess this is appealing for them because these are lineups that come from these realities. Lineups that you would see in Berlin, artists that are residents in Berghain, in Panorama Bar, in the Berlin clubs. This is where my inspiration comes from. So we're trying to bring in some way a piece of Berlin here.
And are you playing anywhere else other than Afterlife then, or is this all just for you weekly there on a Thursday?
Yeah, we did the opening for Circo Loco. Was great this week. And then we're gonna play. No, that's it. Just the Afterlife. And I mean, maybe something else we're gonna announce in the summer, but we're not sure. And obviously tonight at IMS.
I think just adding to what Matteo was saying, that the market ultimately makes itself, and Ibiza can't. I mean, it's good. You know, Berlin's got many of the things that most people come to Ibiza for. You know, great music, dance all day, dance all night. And apart from the sun, which it hasn't got, there's an awful lot going for Berlin. So, you know, when there are other places, you know, life does exist beyond Ibiza, and Ibiza shouldn't get arrogant about it and just, you know, keep jacking up prices and put on shit shows because people won't come. Ibiza's got to move forward with the times and compete for people's attention. Now it's certainly got the world's attention, but it's still, you can't get arrogant about it. I've always said that, you know.
Do you feel that there's some areas where it really has fallen down then, or that there's not been enough effort been made? When you mention the arrogance.
Yeah, I mean, I think San Antonio, as a tourist experiment, you know, when you think back to what it was meant to be when they started building it in the late 60s, 70s, it's let itself down terribly. It was the entry point for so many young kids because of the price point. It was where so many people came for the first time and then traveled around Ibiza and discovered Ibiza. But frankly, it's an embarrassment, you know, apart from Mambo. So that would be my example of being arrogant about, you know, you know, walking through San Antonio sometimes it's like, you know, it's just so disappointing. And I tried to go there to change people's perception of it. And I think, because I kind of recognize that if there's nowhere to come when you're 16, 17 years old, 18 years old for the first time, you can't afford all these other places, and that's the first thing you see, well, maybe I will try Croatia or Turkey or go back to Berlin.
Was it during your time at Eden that you kind of developed that opinion much more strongly?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was always a fan of the idea of San Antonio. You know, from just going to Cafe Del Mar. We took Radio 1 to Cafe Del Mar in 1995, broadcast there for the first time, shifted to Mambo the next year. We've been going back ever since, and with my Radio 1 hat on, San Antonio is hugely important to Radio 1. So I tried to keep going back there doing different things, and I love, you know, the Mambo family. If it wasn't for them and for Javi and Christian and Alan, it would be even worse. But at least that is still going as an institution, and it's great. Almost like DC-10 is the one place in the world everyone will go and play there for nothing, you know, because they love the vibe of what that place stands for. But yeah, when we were doing Eden, you know, I used to kind of smuggle people in when it was dark. And we had an amazing lineup there, you know, from like Luciano playing there to, you know, Lady Gaga, for better or worse. But when people left, when it was daytime and they got to wait for a taxi or they walked down to the front, I could never get them to come back. That's the truth.
Okay, last question to you, Pete, and then we're going to try and get some questions from the audience. What are Radio 1 doing this year?
A combination of Ushuaia and Space and Mambo.
Okay, and that's the first weekend in August, as always.
It's like the 6th, 7th of August, yeah, that time.
Okay, can we do questions from the audience? We got a mic over there. Any questions? Don't be shy, come on.
Hi, I'm Holly from Club Azap to Ibiza. I came to Ibiza 3 years ago and I moved to San Antonio. In regards to what Pete's just said, what do you think that promoters can do to help San Antonio get back on its feet? If the rumour's true that space might open again in San An, can you give us some ideas how we can help get it back on the map?
I think a lot of it is beyond the promoters. To be honest, it's beyond. It's not your fault, and I don't think it's necessarily your problem to solve. But just reinvestment from the government and just start. I mean, there's some things they've done with rebuilding the marina and the causeway, but the place needs smartening up. You know, reinvestment in hotels for a start. You know, better accommodation. You know, you can look around. Everything could be improved, and it's a big problem. It's a big undertaking.
Richard, did you go to San Antonio the first time you came to Ibiza? Was that your entry point as well?
The first time I DJ'd in Ibiza was 1988, and I was playing in San Antonio. There's a club called Weekend, and it was in the West End with Carlos Diaz and Tony Cagna. And it was a dump back then, you know. It kind of always has been. But there was a vibe there, and people were getting around the island. I was lucky enough to go to Coup and Amnesia, and when they were like open air clubs and very, very different to what they are now. Back in '88 and '89, and like Space as well when that started. I think it was 1990. I remember Alex P and Brandon Block DJing off of a table in the cloakroom, and like they got their residency there through that. But there was always San Antonio was always, a cheap holiday, like package tour holiday, and Brits abroad. On package tours are not savoury. It's the drunk British louts would go to San Antonio, and because of the price, like Pete was saying, it's so cheap. You can get a package holiday with flights for virtually nothing, and it's just a big piss up. And that's what people are going there for, to get drunk, be obnoxious, and that's got to be battled with if San Antonio is going to change. And it's always been like that. And I've DJed at some fun things in Eden and just outside. The zoo experience was good. And back in the day when Eddie Locke used to use the zoo and do some parties, that was always good fun. And you get a nice bunch of people come. And there's a lot of great people. Not last year, the year before, I did a boat party in San Antonio, and that was fantastic. So things can happen there, but while the environment is that, like Pete was saying, people don't really want to go. They're like
in the 90s, we didn't want to come to Playa d'Embossa either. I wouldn't say it was necessarily as messy as San An, but it wasn't a great place to be. And look at what's happened now. So there is hope, because this is transformed this whole area. And I hear I hear about a lot of investment going into the north of the island now. That's where the next wave of kind of new hotels are going to open. So that's kind of sad that again it's going to bypass San Antonio. So if there's new money coming to the island.
Okay. More questions? Nothing at all. Okay. Well, just like to say thank you to the panel, and good luck for this summer.